Is this thing working? Are we live? It does look like we are live, but my camera situation is all kinds of messed up. Do a little bit of housekeeping behind me. What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic, whatever day you end up watching this. It is Two Wheel Tuesday. Used to be Moto Chat. Two Wheel Tuesday, so talking about bikes typically. Won't try to get too far off topic. Tuesdays are basically reserved for stuff on two wheels. Get to talk pretty much anything, any brand. It doesn't matter to me. If it's got two wheels, I'm a big fan of it. So typically, the way the show starts off is I'll start yammering on about some topic, get the show started, and then I will divert to you guys, and we'll start back and forth. Comments, whatever the case may be, a little bit of fellowship, as you may say. But at any rate, talking primarily tonight about why I went with the GSXR 1000. Why did I not go with a different platform? What else was I considering? What are some of the other bikes that are out there that I have looked at and that I had passed on? And why did I do that? So we're going to let a couple of y'all in. DM has made it in already. He's got the right cadence. Got the flex with the bald guy in the shades. I like it. So yeah, I am thoroughly enjoying this bike. Matter of fact, I think that this thing may end up being probably the best bike that I've ever ridden, as weird as that might sound, considering some of the heavy artillery that I have ridden. Ryan is in. What is up? Skids is checking in. My man, I like it. So if you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, share. It means the world to me, to the channel, and to everybody to help this thing to grow. Those algorithms and all. We got about 13,500 of us strong subscribing. One of these days, we're going to get to 100 grand. But until then, we'll just have to hang out on Tuesday and Saturday. So I like when everybody's like checking in with each other. It's always cool. Allergies are wrecking my day. So let's dive into the GSXR 1000, the whys, the whats, and all the other stuff behind it. So here we go. Yes, I am and have been a bit of a Suzuki simp for a long time. Going back in the days when I was a little kid, the GS 1100 was my all-time favorite bike, at least for a 7 or 8 year old me. But I always liked that bike. But then the Katana hit, which absolutely transformed the look of what a motorcycle would have been to anybody before 1982. It's pretty exotic stuff if you think about it. But that kind of set my mind in motion in terms of the type of bike that I was going to be attracted to. My dad was an avid street racer, and so he always had whatever the latest hot rod motorcycle would have been. He had the Z1, he even had a Ninja 600, which we would actually tandem race that bike. You can believe that. That's the kind of growing up that I did. Yeah. Don't tell mom you beat the 944. That's the kind of stuff we would hear about. So anyway, getting back to it, it was always going to be a major deal for me. But when it comes to sport bikes or motorcycles of any kind, to be a little bit more leaning on the Suzuki end. Again, it was just more of an aesthetic than anything else, but I did like that 1100. So fast forward a ton of years, and you would find me on a GSXR 750 running through the hills in Northern California. That GSXR 750 was my track bike. That's the bike that I got into the most trouble, the bike that I really did cut my teeth on. I had an RC51 before that, but I'd ridden other street bikes, a Hurricane 600. But the main thing is that, God, the Suzuki always fit. I don't know what it was about the ergonomics or whatever. Okay, well, now fast forward to just a couple of days ago. Yes, got the freaking GSXR 1000 in dashing red, which is very similar to Redline Red. And DM's the only one that picked up on this. Yes, this is the second Revlon, if you will. For those of y'all who don't remember, or haven't been around long enough to remember, I should say, Revlon was my Hellcat, the Redline Red. Another fellow were trading back and forth stock boost records. Anyway, it's very similar color to that car. So when I saw it, by the way, I saw my bike in the back of Stubbs Cycles, which is where I bought the bike. It still had plastic on it. Like, I was the first not employee to even lay eyes on this thing. Fun fact, and this will end up being a thumbnail at some point, but when I picked up the bike, it was 0,00000 all the way across the odometer. And by the way, speaking of dealerships, and I'm not getting anything back on this, but huge props to Robert and to Hunter over at Stubbs Cycles. Made this transaction extremely smooth, very easy, very fun. Hooked me up on my trade, hooked me up on the price on this bike. Took extremely good care of me. You know, it reminded me of what maybe some type of a dealership back in the day would have been like more relationship based. Like, yeah, just give him the bike, cut him a deal, whatever, because he's going to be back in here for parts. He's going to be back in here for service. He's got to have us put the tires on the thing, you know, just hook him up. He'll be back. And that's the kind of mentality that I felt like it was, just real laid back, chill atmosphere. And so I ended up buying the bike because of it. So guys, y'all did a great job. Thank you a ton. There's that. But one of the things that really triggered me to this bike was Suzuki had a demo day. And of course, you know, the Orange Crush picked up a GSXR 1000. And I was in the process with the Katana of going through a little bit of, how do I say, is it buyer's remorse the right thing? It was just really not the right fit for me. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, even in what everything that I did to that bike in terms of upgrades for ergonomics were improvements, but it never did land at an ergonomic that I was just more familiar with and that I was just more comfortable with. There is absolutely nothing, and I would like a lot to have that bike back. If it was possible and I could make it happen, I would. But it's just not. It's a great bike. I would recommend that bike to anybody. You can find it in the used motorcycle section of Stubbs Cycles on Telephone Road in Houston, Texas. And, you know, again, guys did a great job, but had to move on from the Katana, and this is the bike for me. Now, in saying all of that, what would be the next step? What are the goals for this bike? Well, the thing is that it's a GSXR 1000, so it makes plenty of power, although it is infested with nannies. We'll get to that here in a minute. But in terms of upgrades and updates, it's going to get for some reason, my head always goes to TaylorMade. Yoshimura slip-on exhaust is going to get an AT2 slip-on and the Suzuki rear cowl. It's also going to get the Yoshimura exhaust hanger, and I'll get some flush mount side lights at some point. And that's going to be about it for performance mods that aren't attuned. There's no reason for me to really want or need any more power out of this bike. It's extremely smooth and linear with the power that it puts down, which makes it a lot of fun to ride because it has torque everywhere. The variable cam engine, you just barely tip into the throttle of the thing, ushers you along. And at practically any RPM, it is just acceleration on demand with no hesitation and no discernible ramping up of power. I mean, it does ramp up, but it's nothing like what you might have expected, like an older GSXR 1000. It's so much more stout down low at partial throttle inputs that it does what Suzuki's do best. It feels like it is a much larger engine at low RPM than it really is. And I don't know how Suzuki does that. It's like some kind of magic trick that they do. But ever since I can remember riding GSXR 750, even the 600, the GSXR 1000 in particular, it always felt like a bigger engine underneath you than, say, a Honda CBR 1000. So There's kind of the update and some upcoming things. By the way, the exhaust will be here in just a couple of days. So I'll be fitting the exhaust the day I'm sure that it comes in. And then the cowl will be here whenever. And that's just to do away with the passenger seat because I'm doing away with the passenger pegs. Smoking Hot is not interested in riding around on the back of this thing. We've got a couple of bikes and that she does like riding around on, so we'll keep it there. Oh, also, we're going to talk about the T-Bird and what all is going on with that bike too. Just don't let me forget. Don't let me, if y'all are interested, don't let me forget to bring you guys up to speed on that bike. I just last night finished the tune on it. It was pouring down rain, and then I was able to get the bike out today. And yeah, it's a pretty slick running bike now. Let's see. Let me check in with you guys, and then we will dive back into it. We're going to talk about some of the bikes that I rode and why I decided against them along the way. So we've got DM checking in with everybody. Let's see. Oh, goodness. I just blasted past everybody. Ryan say, we can't forget to tell us about what happened to the T-Bird. Oh, I just saw that. Cool. Yes, I will be talking about the T-Bird. So let me get back over here. By the way, the T-Bird's running really nice now. I spent probably 20 minutes working on the tune. I did not do a lot to it, but it is definitely woken up. So you're saying, who can blame you? Suzuki has the SV, the Busa, RZ, what's not to simp over? Yeah. Super interested in the new RZ. Dude, I'll tell you what, one of the bikes that I really fell in love with in a weird way was the GSXR. So that was one of the bikes that I was able to get on the demo day ride. And I kid you not, and I'm not making this up, I would have liked to have spent a little bit more time with that bike. I already knew that I was going to go with the GSXR 1000 and not the R, by the way. And they are different when you sit on them and ride them. I'm telling you. Yeah, the GSX 8R for me, like if I was in my 20s and just needed something to blast around town on, and I mean, go out, have fun, play with it or whatever, but something that wasn't going to like way overwhelm me. And I was going to be able to get it out, have fun, goof off. Like if I'm like in like 17 to 24, not that you can't enjoy it at any age. I mean, hell, I was having a ball with thing, but I could really see where that bike would appeal to a youth market in ways that like the Daytona 660 or the Tuono 660 won't. And that's with that initial torque kit. Plus it's about $1,000 less expensive if memory serves me correct. And the quick shifter was really good on that bike too. I think I mentioned that in the other video, but it bears repeating. I mean, Suzuki did not waste or did not, they didn't waste the technology on just one bike. They spread it out. And when I rode the 8R, it was a fun little bike to ride. The Busa. Ryan saying, already got a speeding ticket on the CF Moto. Good job, friend. You can say Busa's thick. Yeah, Busa is thick. Busa's easy to ride, though. You take that thing out squidding? Yes, old lady's pissed. So, guys, I don't know if you may or may not have remembered this story, but for those of you that are on the channel, I accidentally led some of my local friendlies on a relatively short high-speed chase on the Z1. Luckily, the guys were cool. They didn't. I think they figured that I wasn't trying to do anything. But I had hit some off ramps down here really hard with that bike and had it way over on the side of the tire, wide open pretty much everywhere. And I kind of slowed down on the freeway. I was just kind of chilling, looking around, oh, pretty bird, nice, squirrel. And then I get lit up from behind. Anyway, long story short, once I took my helmet off, they see old bald guy, like, oh shit. Okay. Yeah, that was pretty funny. I asked I said, when did you see me? As we saw when you were taking this right-hand turn. I said, oh yeah. I said, how'd it look? He goes, it looked pretty badass. I was like, all right, cool. But yeah, I was just out having fun with it. And there was nobody else really around me when I was hammering on it. So anyway, you live and you learn, but yeah, that's fun. But I got lit up by two guys. And the thing is I had my ears in too. So there was no way I would have heard anything with that Brock's exhaust that I had on that bike. Kind of glad that's over with, by the way. Yeah, it's difficult not to play. Yep. At least you're having fun. That's funny. Oh, CF motos have got to be fun. Let's see. DM saying a few high dollar speeding tickets got me to the track. It was cheaper. You better believe that. Yeah, actually, I did get a citation on mine, but it wasn't a moving violation. So I got lucky. Just wanted to open her up. So Sovereign saying, spike the like. Why does my computer keep doing silly things? Let's see. Skid saying GSXR can do some serious damage. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the ZX10. We're also going to talk about the CBR. I'm just letting you guys check in. Yeah, Ryan, I'm sure does have some stories on that Super Sport. GSXR 1000 is such an easy bike to ride, man. I'm not kidding. It is of the leader class hot rods, it is easily at the top of the list as far as being easy to ride. So let's get into that. Go with the GSXR 1000 over the rest of the field. So for starters, you got to look at motorcycles a little bit differently than cars. Motorcycles are all about ergonomics and fit and how your brain kind of gels around the machine. Motorcycles are a weird thing where the slightest thing being out of adjustment can make your mind not fit the machine. Just adjusting some things, where the handlebars sit, where the clutch and the brake lever sit in relation to your wrist, the feel of the throttle, how the clutch actuates. If you crab claw the clutch, or if you use a finger or one finger, two, whatever, all of these things are, it's kind of weird how your mind will wrap around a bike. And for me, that's the most important part. And of all the leader class bikes, we're talking the Aprilias, the Ducatis, which would have been actually a Panigale V2 would have been in that mix. Aprilia RSV4. You would have had the BMW was never really in the running because it was outside of a price point, which should also tell you why, any more exotica, it didn't quite make the cut. But you start looking at the big four out of Japan. So let's dive into that. The Suzuki GSXR 1000 compared to ... the CBR 1000. The CBR, which is weird for me with Honda, because typically Honda has the least aggressive ergonomics, or at least they used to. That is not the case with the CBR 1000. I felt like that bike was, as were pretty much the rest of the field here, made for guys that were somewhere around, I don't know, somewhere around, I just saw a Sovereign's thing, somewhere around 5.7, 5.8. Videos like 240p. Let me try something with this. Let me do something real quick. I'm going to move this thing. Let me move this real quick. Hang on just a second. Hang on. Hold on a minute now, daggone it. Sometimes here at the studio, a lot of times at night, I get some really funky internet. So hopefully that gets a little bit better. But let me get back to it. I didn't like the CBR 1000, the ergonomics. It just didn't fit right for whatever reason. my body just didn't fit on that bike the way that it did on the GSXR 1000. And it had more to do with the foot peg placement than anything else. Now that could have been adjusted or what have you, like I was just talking about before. But the reality is that I never got to a point with that bike where I really gelled with it. Now, what about the ZX10? Have been very vocal about loving Kawasaki. I've always loved Kawasaki. But again, the ZX10 didn't quite fit right. To me, the ZX10 felt odd in that, for whatever reason, I felt like the handlebars were way more forward than what was comfortable for me. Again, I didn't get a chance to ride that bike, but it just felt, when I sat on it, I didn't immediately just go, okay, click, 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 I'm ready to go. The R1 didn't get a look because of the price point. And the reality, guys, is that it was not going to happen. Damn, Sovereign, it's not doing any better. Let me try something else. We're going to do one more thing. Hang on. Hey, talk amongst yourselves, boys. Hang on. All right, let's see if that helped it. Is that any better? Okay, maybe that's better. I don't know if it is or not. Anyway, the R1 didn't get a look. And the reason why the R1 didn't get a look, again, it was price point. They were just wanting way too much. And this is a situation where you can talk about the technology. You can talk about how old a particular bike's designs are. You can talk about all of that, but the main thing is, for me, at the end of the day, it's all about the fit and it's all about the feel of the bike. And the Suzuki nailed that. And when it comes to power, here's the other thing. The big issue when it comes to power is that they're all incredibly powerful. It doesn't really matter which bike you get. They're all stupid fast. So power at this point is kind of it's a given, really. But if you are so inclined to try to get a number out of a bike, GSXR 1000 with very little done to it will get you well into the 180-ish horsepower to the rear tire. And yeah, that ain't nothing to sneeze at. From the factory, I think they're around 165 to the rear tire. So I gotta say, it was almost a no-brainer at that point. I mean, for me, of the Japanese bikes, it's got the least amount of like TFT crap and all the rest of this stuff. And that was the other thing. Even though it's got a variable cam and it's got all the other cool doodads that make that thing great, with probably the best quick shifter I've ever ridden and a really good traction control system, it wasn't overbearing. It wasn't overdone. It doesn't have a whole lot of things that I got to think about when I'm riding a bike. In fact, I'll even go so far as to say this is probably the most raw of the 1000cc bikes that are on offer. Because I tell you this, you sit on the bike, you turn the key on, you press the mode button once, boop, everything turns off except for ABS. Everything turns off the press of one button. And then you turn it back on, and the default is the most aggressive setting that you can have for the traction control. And yeah, I have had it tickle traction control for me a couple of times, which was kind of fun. But yeah, on its most aggressive setting, right when you fire up the bike, that's pretty cool stuff. But that to me was, it was the fit, it was the old school flavor of it. It was the kind of the way that my brain sees it, the rawness. It doesn't have a TFT. It still has an LCD screen, although you can put a TFT on the bike. I didn't really see a reason for it. I like the old school flavor of this thing. And y'all know I'm a bit of an old school guy anyway. but this bike offers up something for me where I get all of the benefits of the technology of today, and I still get to enjoy a little bit of the old school with an old school display, with an old school riding position. And that's, I guess, another thing. The Suzuki really is the most comfortable. Now, I'd mentioned a couple of European bikes. The Aprilia RSV4, I didn't like that option because it really isn't the bike's fault. I just don't have a really good close place to take it for service should I need it. And the dealership that I bought my Suzuki from is like right down the road practically. So there's nothing really off of, my schedule and off of my convenience to take the bike there. I like the Aprilia, but the main thing is that I also was not going to get the deal on an Aprilia that I got on the Suzuki. Let's be honest. And at the end of the day, again, if you're going to put these in a can and shake it up, I'm going to pick the GSXR 1000 just because of my history with Suzuki. So now I want to talk about a bike that I did a review on. And this is actually where the run got a lot closer for me. And that is with the Street Triple 1200. And why I decided not to go with that bike. So when I rode that bike, there were some things like I was making adjustments to that bike before I even rode it. Getting the clutch right, the brake right, getting everything just sorted out with that bike. And keep in mind, I didn't have my Katana when I rode that bike. I had my, it was the Cafe. And so what ended up happening here is, it's kind of funny. It's almost like I couldn't get comfortable on that bike. And the other thing about it is that compared to the Z1, it didn't offer up the charm, I guess, that I felt that a Triumph really should offer up. But something else that it didn't do is it didn't really instill a lot of confidence in me. I felt like I was sitting more up on top of the bike, which is kind of where I ended up with the Katana. But I felt like I was sitting more up on top of the bike, and I didn't feel like I was quite as connected to it. Another thing that I did not like about that bike was the quick shifter. The quick shifter on the Speed Triple RR is not bad, but you can tell it's like a generation one, where the Suzuki is just like a generation way farther ahead than that. Just pick something. The Suzuki is just better than the Speed Triple RR. And I will say this, but credit where it's due. The Speed Triple makes a ton of power. It's very smooth. It still is a 170 something horsepower bike. It doesn't give up that much horsepower to the GSXR 1000, maybe 5 or 6 at the rear wheel, and might make up for that with 5 or 6 foot-pounds of torque. But the reality is that bike felt like a very good attempt to make a bike like that, but it wasn't a successful attempt. And that's where the Suzuki got me. And I'll tell you this too, what put me over the ledge with the GSXR 1000, and you'll keep hearing me say this because you probably get sick of it, was the quick shifter. And it's not because it had a quick shifter or has a quick shifter. It's because of how flipping good it is. And just like I was saying in the video about the bike, what I can only describe to you as DCT, that dual clutch transmission that you would find like in the new C8 Corvette or any of these exotic cars that have that type of a transmission where you're driving down the road and you just in manual mode go, ramp, bam, bam, bam. You just press the button and it clicks into gear. That's what this bike feels like to ride. It's that smooth. And I'll take it a step farther. It doesn't matter if you're at 2,500 RPM or 12,500 RPM. It is exceptionally smooth, no jerkiness, no anything weird like that. You just simply ride the thing, click it, keep your throttle right where you're at, and it just keeps going. I had the bike, and I got to where I'm playing with this thing already. The RS11 tires on this thing, by the way, are freaking cash money. I mean, they are so good on the street. But one of the things I found with the Suzuki that I could do that I didn't feel comfortable with the Speed Triple is I can have that thing mid angle through a sweeper at about 3/4 throttle, and I can just fan through the gears, looking through the throttle or looking through the turn, just fan through the gears. Or if I need to downshift, I can just downshift. And it's like having a DCT. It's crazy, but it removes a lot of the upsettedness that you get with a clutch transmission. Even when you're preloading and clicking, you still have a little bit of an upset. You get none of that with this transmission in the Suzuki. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. The Triumph is not like that. The Triumph felt like it had a lot of play before it would shift. That load sensor had to really be preloaded or loaded, and it felt a little bit awkward. And then downshifts, it was really not happy. So it is what it is, guys. And don't get me wrong, I was a guy that would tell you, I like the older bikes. I don't like all these doodads. I want this stuff to be raw. I want to be able to, like just like the T595. I got a 955cc triple, no nannies, no nothing, no traction control, just you and the bike. And that is wonderful. But I have to say, I am eating crow on this, my boys, because this bike is on a completely different level in terms of being safe, confidence inspiring, and like. And speaking of safety, that's one thing that this bike does have in spades. It feels like not only with the fact that it's got all the traction controls and all the electronics, but it's got the steering dampener that it comes with from the factory. It's nice and it's tucked in. It's really cool just how clean this bike is, which is another takeaway with this Suzuki. It's a damn set cleaner than what you might think. And people always talk about Suzuki as being this kind of value proposition. It's a value-driven bike. It's built to a price point. I don't know what the cost of winning is, but Suzuki's got that covered. And they certainly got my attention with that color too, because that dashing red, as it's called, is criminally pretty in person. And yes, it does do that weird orange shift on camera, which I cannot understand. But let me check in with you guys real quick. Oh, hang on. What is happening here? Okay. DM said, I like leader bikes because they can be tamed with all that torque. You can ride a bit lazy until you don't want to. Kind of like a 500 horsepower versus 707 mode on Hellcats. It really is. In fact, it's what's funny with the Suzuki is how smooth it is. I'll even take it a step further. After being on the demo ride, what I found was that it was more like the Speed Triple RR, which is a 1200. It felt so much like that bike in terms of power delivery at lower RPM. So, it is what it is, man. It's doing what Suzuki does best. It's a cheat code. Anytime you see the red S, that means cheat code somehow or another. I don't know how Suzuki does it or did it back in the day even, but you could put that. Okay. So back in the day, like say circa 2009, remember when the latest CBR 1000 came out? It had the lower mounted exhaust. It's a beautiful bike. And in fact, if I ever found a Repsol version of that bike, I would probably pick it up. Great ergonomics, down on power, but just a phenomenal motorcycle to ride. It's like the 750 of thousands is the way that I'll try to describe it. My GSXR 750 and the CBR 1000s would kind of walk hand in hand in terms of like a drag race, if you will. Obviously, my 750 was not stopped, but you get the idea. So back then, if you rode a 2009 GSXR 1000, it felt like a larger bike than the CBR 1000. Not in terms of sheer size. It just felt like it had a bigger engine everywhere. Low RPM, middle RPM. It just always felt like a bigger engine. And for whatever reason that is, that's something that is always stuck in my head is when I rode the CBR 1000 back then, I liked that bike a lot. But then I'd ride the Gixxer 1000 and I was like, this thing's a little scarier. Like that was the first thing that I remember is this is a little bit scarier bike. So anyway, let's see. Sorry to say, sadly, that didn't do much. I guess we're still working on we're still working with some issues with our connection out there. Oh, Ryan said I have to write, nice perspective. Yeah, leader bikes are, I mean, they're a cheat code nowadays, dude. They really are. I mean, my bike red lines at 14.5, 14,500 RPM, but it will pull from idle. What? Like, who does that? How can you do that? This thing revs to 14.5 RPM, and yet it pulls like a scooter from low RPM, like a really big, powerful scooter, but you get the idea. Just saying, good comparison. When I was in my 20s, I wasn't responsible enough for a leader bike. Same. Luckily, my ex wouldn't let me have one. Second wife is way cooler. So I think I may have said, no, I haven't said the story yet. So this is our first Two Wheel Tuesday with the GSXR. My wife, I brought it by the house for her to check it out. And she's like, oh, I love the color. This thing is badass. And then she walks around to the right-hand side of the bike and is like, what the fuck is that? Talking about the can, the exhaust can, that freaking piece of luggage that hangs off the side. I was like, babe, it's going to be gone before the end of the week. She's like, yeah, you got to get rid of that now. So not only is my wife the coolest, she is very adamant about making sure that the bike looks cool too. And then it runs good and then it sounds good too. Cause she's like, oh, I don't like the way it sounds. Like it's coming. Don't worry. It'll sound good. And it will sound amazing. Orange Crush CBR 1000 with that Yoshimura exhaust sounds, it is perfect. Absolutely perfect with the way that it sounds. And one of the reasons why is because for the time being, I'm retaining all factory catalytic converters, emission, and all of that. The reason for that has nothing to do with performance. There's some power to be gained, obviously, with removing all of that, but that involves removing all of that stuff, a complete tune, and everything else, which you can do. Obviously, mine will get tuned, but it's probably just got nannies removed and some fueling stuff knocked out. Maybe a little bit of time, but not much. But the point that I'm getting to with that is, look, man, they're just really good from the factory, but the way they sound with the cats, with that slip-on, it's deep, it sounds good, it's not wailing, it's not overpoweringly loud, it just sounds so good. So that's why I'm going with that exhaust. Oh, R was saying R1 is, or DM saying R1 is steep in price and finicky to set up out of the box. Gixxer is the easiest to make track ready. Yeah, I mean, it's so good already, dude. I haven't touched anything on the suspension, and I'm not really hard on it yet, obviously. I mean, I can't really wail on it, but I'm buzzing it to $7,000 everywhere I go. I'm not, ripping it. I have ripped into a little bit. There is a nanny that needs to be removed. And by the way, I thought that the flat spot in the Katana was bad. Oy. Anyway, not complaining. It's just an observation, but it keeps you out of trouble. Ryan saying Gixxer looks downright sexy in that dashing red. It really is better looking in person, man. Suzanne, you're right. You don't make your decision based on power numbers. They're all stupid fast. They're all stupid fast. That's the crazy thing about it is, they'll all hit speed. They'll all hit 160 miles an hour in an amount of time that just doesn't seem natural. Like it's you click it. I mean, you can short shift this thing up to 140 and not even realize you're going that fast. Just ding, 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 ding. Team saying we were young gentlemen. Yeah, the problem is it was well, you're getting kind of old for this. Like, no, I've figured out how to do all my irresponsible stuff in a responsible manner. Golfer is saying, do you think Suzuki will update the 600 and 750? It's a good question. I've got mixed feelings in this. So so selfishly, I hope they don't. I would like to see him give the 750 the same quick shifter that the 1000 has. If that's all they did to it, I would be a huge fan of that bike again. With the 750 to 600, I kind of like that they're a throwback body, right? If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, the 600 and the 750, the front nose cowl is huge. Looks like a giant titty. It really does. Like, it looks like a giant fake tit on that bike. And I love that. I think it's great. But more to the point, I like that it's got the little LCD screen and the analog tack. I like that kind of stuff. I don't need all the rest of the stuff to go along with it. Maybe some rider modes, but there's no reason for either one of those bikes to be Euro 5 compliant, so they can keep the cable throttle, which, by the way, is a big reason why I love the GSXR 1000 so much, is that it is not a Euro 5 bike. It is America, baby. So, still has the cable throttle, which makes me so happy. So happy. Anyway, getting back to it, the GSXR 600 and 750, I would like to see him get the technology for the quick shifter, because it is that freaking good, guys. This latest generation listen, don't take my word for it. Just go ride one. Go see if you can catch a Suzuki demo day. Jump on the GSXR 1000 and just play with the quick shifter. It's creepy how good it works. It's like having an automatic transmission. It really is. It's as close as you can get to a DCT without having a DCT. But if they did, listen, I would love to do something like that, but just leave the analog tack on there is all I ask. Or have an option like a technology package. Might cost you $1,500, but with the technology pack, you get your TFT and your, that latest visual aesthetic that a lot of dudes dig, and I completely understand because they're nice. But make it an option. Don't make it mandatory if possible for that, and I'd be real happy with it. And then as far as power goes, man, look, the 600 is right where it needs to be at about $120. The 750 is 140 to 145, right in that range at the flywheel for those numbers. I would say that I would rather have maybe the 750. Man, I don't know that you can bump that up too much. Maybe a little bit. Maybe get it up to a true 150 horse. If that would even be possible, but it doesn't have any real competition. And in super sport racing, now it's going to be one of the most neuter of the group, where it was the Panigale V2. Golfer, you're saying, great choice. You bought one of the goats. Yeah, absolutely, man. I agree with you 100%. Oh, and here's something else you can think about with the GSXR, the way that it shapes up, like car guys, right? The GSXR is the yardstick. The GSXR is what everybody compares their bike to. Is it faster than a GSXR? Just like they say, is it faster than a Hellcat? The GSXR 1000, or I should say, the Hellcat is the GSXR Thal of the car world. Is it faster than a Hellcat? Well, then you know it's really freaking fast. Well, it's kind of like that with the GSXR 1000. Is it faster than a GSXR? Can you beat it with a GSXR? If the answer is yes, you know you're dealing with something that's really fast, or you're on something that's really fast. And so to me, it kind of scratches that itch. And another thing about the Suzuki that kind of brings out the inner Mopar guy in me is the simple fact that it is still a bit throwback, the way that the Mopar is still a bit throwback too. So yeah, it takes a little bit of mental gymnastics to get there, but that's kind of where I'm at with that bike. It touches the right nerves, and it's the right color, and it's the right fit. So what more could I hope for? It's good saying. Agreed. Oh, DM said he loved his Busa. Busas were always fun. I always thought it'd be fun to build a dedicated roll race Busa. Ryan said I went through an FTR 1200, so looks like I'd get over the leader problem there eventually. Jeremy's saying 750 is the best for beginner and experienced driver and with a tune. It's right there with a 1 liter. Yeah, I mean, I used to pick on leader class bikes at the track with my 750. Now, then again, these were guys that didn't have quite the experience that I did, and their bikes were stock, or more or less stock, like stock with a slip on or something. And these were bikes from back in the day. So, but yeah, my GSXR 750 was just a little pissed off thing, man. There are times when I think, man, I shouldn't have sold the bike. Ryan said, Skids, have you rode the new CF Moto Triple? You need to just test drive one. I hear it's really good. Oh, Skid's hanging out with Ryan about the FTR. Yep. 675 is supposed to be a pretty bike, man. Ryan saying it's a lot of fun. Skid saying, calm down. I see community service in your future. Oh, Shakespeare's Pizza. Nice. Let's see. You got Ryan and Skids hanging out. Let's see. Mountain Grove. Ropes the bike a lot. I'm telling you, it's kind of hard not to put your hand on the GSXR 600 or 750, especially relationship. Skid saying, I love my quick shifter on the Ducati. It's extremely smooth. When I jumped on the HD, then I feel like I have to learn how to shift all over. Then when I jump over back to the Duck, I have to remind myself, hey, you have a quick shift. So here's the cool thing. Oh, about the GSXR 1000. This is something that I failed to mention, or at least I didn't put enough emphasis on why, aside from, Skids, I missed your thing about the horn. Is it going to hit the States? Is the CB1000 and the CB1000 actually going to make it to the United States shores? Because if they do, the 1000 and the 750, those are going to be ridiculous. Oh, and I'll know where to find one. They'll have them over at Stubbs. There's another plug for that dealership. They really did take care of me, man. I had a great time working with those guys. So if they get one in, guys, I'll get you some images of it for sure. The Thou is coming over. Okay, cool. Either way, man, I'd love a leg over on that 1000, man. 150 horsepower, 470 pounds. It's gonna be a bad little bike, dude. Oh, but what I was getting at is, okay, check this out. When you ride, see, I'm going to try to explain this. When I ride the GSXR 1000 and I ride it the same way I ride my T595. In other words, just going through the gears, clutch, downshift, whatever, blip downshifts, everything. DM, thank you so much for the gas money, bro. Thank you very, very much. So dude, it's funny you mentioned that. I was actually, I was able to sneak it out a little bit today at lunch, try to work in some break-in miles. But thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Do appreciate it. So I got to tell you, and yeah, anybody else wanted, anyway, no, but here's what I wanted to get at. With the quick shifter on the Suzuki, you literally can ride it like a normal motorcycle. where the speed triple, you cannot. Like, it gets pissy on blipping downshifts. It would get pissy about downshifts at slower speeds. It got a little bit clunky at upshifts at lower speeds. At speeds, you're going through the gears, but it felt like you're like really flapping your leg. Almost felt like I had to like give it some hip. You know what I mean? Like, it's an exact, I get it, but it really did feel so much different. Excuse me. But yeah, I was just kind of blown away by the fact that I can still ride the GSXR 1000 the way that I ride an old school motorcycle with no penalty, with smoothness, response. There's no, just, it's that freaking good, guys. I'm telling you, and I'm not one to sit here and fawn over something. If I think it's okay, I'll say, it's okay. You know, it does cool stuff. It kind of acts cool, but no, dude, no, this thing actually works. I mean, I don't know how you would get it better. You know, there's always room for improvement, but I think this thing has evolved to a point where you would want it to eventually get to. That's about as high a praise as I can give anything. But DM, man, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. But no, Ryan. So talking about the Hornet. Oh, and upcoming bikes. Okay, so let's chat about that for a hot minute. Upcoming motorcycles. So the Hornet 1000, since that thing's coming to the United States, that thing is going to be, for a lot of guys, a serious contender. For many guys that aren't comfortable on a sport bike, that want something that is a bit more standard-ish, but that want the power to go along with it, like sport bike leader class type of power and response, and they don't want to pay a lot of money for it, guys, this Hornet is going to come in. Skids, you're Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that thing going to check in at like 10 grand or something like that? Like, there's not going to be a lot of dollar signs associated with this bike. And by the way, the SE, which is the one you'll buy, that's already got, it's got an upgraded suspension, but it's got a different tune, and it bumps up horsepower too. So it's got more power, more suspension, and you don't pay much of a penalty for it. Like, for what you would maybe think that you would have to pay for the regular Hornet FAL, you get the SE with everything, all the fixes already built into it. So yeah, I would say that thing is going to be a sick little bike. Can't wait for it. A big departure, by the way, from the CB 1000 too. I like the fact that it doesn't have a single-sided swing arm. It's not trying to do the over, like, it's not trying to go over on you with like some kind of styling element there. I like the idea that it's a traditional naked also, which kind of, you know, does something for me. It's kind of like the Z900 RS in a, if the Z900 RS had like the chops, the power to go along with the looks. That's going to be kind of what the Hornet is. But yeah, as far as upcoming bikes, I mean, yep, the Hornet is a huge one. Everybody, you know, like everybody's talking about these new super middleweights, bikes like the R9, the new V2 Panigale, and the RCR. Honda's got its V3, which we'll figure out what that's going to end up really looking like. But you know, one of these things is $12,500 in the R9, and the rest of the field looks like they're going to be around $15,000 to $16,000. And here's the thing, guys, for $12,500, you buy the R9. Like, let's say, for example, you are looking to have a motorcycle that does motorcycle things, that handles amazingly well, but you just don't want the extra power. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's cool to say, look, man, I want all the chops, partial throttle through the mid-range. I'm not looking to have something that makes, you know, 150, 160, 140 horsepower. It's not, you don't want that. You just want something that rips, that's fun, that's torquey. Maybe go to the track, but you probably don't. You just want something that's great fanning through the gears and that handles exceptionally well. That's your R9, and you cannot beat it for $12,500. $500. That price is basically no different than the 21066. So put that in perspective. That's how good of a deal it is on the R9. On the other hand, you've got the Panigale V2, which is starting at 15 grand. And you've got the RCR, which presumably is going to be up in that same stratosphere, with the Duke 990 checking in at like 13 grand or 14 grand, if I remember correctly. So you've got that kind of price range. But if you just for a few dollars more could get your hand on a GSXR 1000, okay? And if the Thowie is a little bit too much wowie for your liking, then you've got the 750. And let's be real, if you want the ultimate throwback experience for sport bikes, Suzuki's been making that GSXR 750 for a better part of 20-something years unchanged. So it's really difficult to bet against Suzuki in this realm. I mean, the only bike in the super middleweight class that's worth even looking at is the R9, because everything else prices itself right into the seat of the GSXR 1000 and is going to check in about $1,500 more than the GSXR 750. Now, say what you will about technology. I will absorb those blows like a punching bag. I appreciate it. But it's a Gixxer 750, bro. Come on, man. Dude. Nobody even knows what a Panigale is, but you know what a Gixxer 7.5 is, baby. Anyway, let me check back in with you guys. Skid saying article said base CB 1000 will start under 10 grand. Yeah. Yeah, I think in British sterling it's like $89.99. That SP will maybe be a slightly over. Yeah, it's going to be a bad bike, dude. If KTM didn't have a rep with head gasket issues, RCR looks killer. They also have a bad habit of eating up camshafts. Hard Rock is in. My man, how's it going? Hope things are going well for you, brother. The KTM is pretty. Skid's checking in with Hard Rock. Skid saying the KTM beats the Yamaha. Dude, the KTM is a sharp looking bike. They're all good looking now, though. DM saying I have an unsettled itch with the R1M, bro. Me and you both. That is a sick bike, dude. That's a sick bike. But I'll tell you this. I mean, and I know that for the track, it's a better bike. I get it. But, dude, for the street, my man, I'm loving this GSXR 1000. I mean, I can – the thing I like about this bike is that it is easily the easiest bike I've ever ridden to ride. Like, to ride at speed. Just – it's so good. I just look where I want to go, and the bike just falls in line and goes. I just look this way, it just kind of goes that way. That's the cool thing about this one. That 155 tire does a lot in that respect. It makes it feel like a middleweight because of the aspect ratio of that tire. So, you know, and it's smooth too. One of the other things I did want to mention about the new GSXR 1000 is how smooth it is. You can park this thing at 100 miles an hour and never, ever have any hand numb or anything like that. I did that as part of the break-in procedure. I'll vary RPM, I'll vary the gear, I'll cruise in 4th gear, 5th gear, 3rd gear, 6th gear, you know, higher throttle inputs to higher RPM, lower throttle inputs to higher RPMs, lots of engine braking, just varying how I ride the bike. I'm very meticulous with the way I brake in a bike, but I'm not ginger with it. I just ride it like a motorcycle, but I put it through intentional scenarios that, you know, you might not normally put the bike through just because why would you? It's kind of a weird way to ride a bike, right? Anyway, that's how I've been braking the bike in, and it'll get its first oil change it'll probably get its first oil change after this weekend if I can get the bike out for some riding this weekend. Ryan's liking the Yamaha. Dude, that Yamaha looks good. So if you haven't seen the R9, Google like Yamaha R9 startup, And the red and white looks good, but that blue, oh shucks, son. That was a good looking bike. They're, like I say, they're all good looking at this point. Right, so I go with the Yamaha over KTM. Well, for durability, sure, it's down by about 10 horsepower, but durability wise, they're all fun, dude. They're all fun. It's saying totally get why you got the Gixxer, the R1. The Gixxer may be the best street leader super sport out there. The R1 has little street manners. Even the stock R1 sounds pissed off. They sound good. They sound really good. They're also, they got that coin, boy. There's very few bikes that I would pick over or along with the Gixxer Thou, and the R1 is the other one. And it's just based on the sound of the thing. They just sound so good. But that said, dude, nothing. I mean, when you talk about 4-cylinder whale on a motorcycle, what are you talking about? What are you really bringing up? Boy, you're talking about the Gixxer, baby. That's what we're talking about. Hard Rock kind of started on a 4-stroke XR 200 trail bike, then a KTM 250s. What a difference that was. Oh, I can imagine. Skid saying, right up to Dallas, B. I bet you can make it up here in an hour. We'll hang for a bit. I forget what my record was going from Plano, or actually it was Addison to North Houston. It's just the other side of 2 hours, I think. But I can blast up there pretty quick. So many amazing choices. Yeah, we are spoiled for choice in the motorcycle world, guys. I mean, we really are. Ryan's saying the same thing. I mean, it's funny how many bikes there are right now that fit a niche, right? Like if you want, you know, liter class torque, but 600 class horsepower, there's a bike for that. You know, if you want something fun and small and just kick it around your upside down pineapple neighborhood, you got the Honda Dax or the Honda Ruckus that'll do that for you. If you want something that's blindingly fast and incredibly stable, you got the Hayabusa. I mean, there's so many neat machines that are out there that, you know, and then that doesn't even count the cruisers and everything else. There's so many interesting and fun bikes that are out. Dude, the RSV4 sounds sick to death, bro. Ain't nobody going to tell you that a Gixxer Thou sounds better than an RSV4. Not in the right mindset. The thing is, the RSV4, man, they ended up selling that. There was a black RSV4 at one of the dealerships down here. And I was looking at it and I probably could have gotten a decent deal on it, but it would have been a whole lot of work, and it did not, it didn't fit like the Gixxer, dude. The Gixxer, I just sat on it. I sat on it, and it's like every nerve in my body connected with that bike in the right kind of way. Like it was like, oh, I remember, this is more like home. It was like putting on one of those, you know, those Gundam suits. You know what I mean? Like everything's, and you're just there. And you're like, man, this is comfy. This is where I'm supposed to be. Other bikes didn't do that. And like the ZX10 was the one that actually bothered me the least about that, because I didn't have any expectations with it. But it was the CBR 1000 that kind of got me a little bit in a weird place. Just because I was so used to Hondas having more relaxed ergos, that one didn't. The Suzuki feels like it's built for a taller guy, and man, it fits me so well. I'm so glad I got that bike. Oh, Ryan's saying, oh, the new Indian Scout 6010, though. Oh, it's a nice bike. Hell of a bike for the money. Any of the new Indians are sick, bro. Oh, Ryan, the T-Bird. Yes. Okay, check this out. The T-Bird had a Remus off-road H-pipe on it. And I did not have the cable. There's a special cable that you have to have to tune that operating system. And it's called a Klein operating system, if I remember correctly. And you can't do it through Bluetooth. You actually have to have a hard connection. And I was able to have the dealership load a tune, though, in it with their software on a Triumph tune. and that was supposed to work for that particular exhaust. And, you read enough people that have had that exhaust or another exhaust, like, yeah, just load this tune and it fixes it. And I'm like, dude, I'm just going to go off of what these guys are saying. There's multiple accounts of success with this. I'm not going to beat my head against the wall. We're just going to move on with this. And so the pipe goes on the bike, the tune goes in the bike, and it ran fine for a while. I kind of noticed it was a little down on power, down low. It made better power up top, but it is what it is. A little bit of different snort, and that was about it. It's a T-Bird after all. But it ended up fouling the plugs. There's nothing wrong with the map sensors. There's nothing wrong with the coil packs. Nothing wrong with the bike other than the plugs just were so. Matter of fact, where are they? They were right here. Like a dog that just heard a whistle or something. Anyway, I know they're sitting right here somewhere. Anyway, yeah, what it did is it fouled the plugs pretty badly, and it fouled them pretty quickly, like within like 500 or 600 miles. So what I did is I replaced the plugs and then had the dealership load the factory tune. It's a 20356 tune into the bike. And I put the factory catalytic converter back on it. And I took it for a spin. And it ran really well. A little bit soft. It ran really good. And I thought, okay, I can work with this. And so what I did is pulled the tune and made some adjustments in timing. The factory tune on that bike, it's almost like the timing on that thing, it was really low. And interestingly enough, the tune that would have taken its place wasn't altogether a lot more aggressive anywhere. So I just said, screw it. I'm going to do an old school A9L Fox body style tune on this thing. So I took a look at fueling, took a look at what it was looking to command at AFR at partial load and wide open. Figured, you know what, that's perfectly fine. I threw 2 degrees of timing at it and let it eat. And that bike loves it. Today I parked it at basically 95 miles an hour and just let it run. And that bike just absolutely grits it out of the hole. It's making better bottom end power. It's making better mid-range power and better partial throttle power through the mid-range. I removed the speed limiter, turned the fans on at like 212 degrees. And what else did I do? Oh, the phone's out there. What else did I do? That was about it. But I just went super old school with it, threw 2 degrees of timing at it across the board. In fact, what it ended up doing is I kind of interpolated the table. So some areas got a little bit more, a little bit less, but it blended in on like an average of 2 degrees. And the bike runs great. So I cannot be really any happier with the way that bike rides. It's still a very safe tune, running that thing on 93 octane. So I just can't see any reason to be worried about that thing anymore. It is really running good, and it runs good. It sounds very crisp, and cracking the throttle real quick, it revs up so much quicker than it did before. So that's a good thing. As far as top speed goes, I don't think it gave up anything, if I'm being honest. I buzzed it up to just shy of 110 today, and it didn't really seem to be bothered by it. And I did it into the headwind. I should have made the run going the other way, but it did fine. Let's see. Let me catch back up with you guys. Yeah, RSV4 and the R1, when it comes to noise, man, they make a really pretty sound. Let's see. If I could slap that new V3 in a cruiser, I'll tell you what, they might be putting that V3 into everything. Everyone except maybe an Arch motorcycle. Is Arch even still around? Arch, however you say it. Oh, motorcycle guys. Yeah, they're a lot. Yeah, they're not as motorcycle guys are more apt to go, oh man, cool bike, instead of talking, a bunch of shit. It's good saying, have a good one, guys. This old dude's got to get up early. Blessings to you, my friend. Yeah, as a matter of fact, we are over an hour. It is time for me to wrap this one up. Hard Rock's asking if KTM's still making motocross bikes. I'm sure they are. I knew a dude in NorCal that's all he ran was KTM, but I don't know. They should be. But guys, I too have got to wrap it up. So listen, I want to thank each and every one of y'all. If it's your first time getting into one of these live shows, I appreciate you stopping by. Considering liking, subscribing, and sharing means a ton to the channel with all those algorithms out there. But most importantly, guys, get out there and do something cool for somebody, because chances are they need it way more than you know. And with that, we will catch you on the next one. Bye.